I desensitized myself to it.
He is pure evil, but you'd never know it by looking at him. But when you hear him, that's another story. His killing field was Milwaukee, and he got away with murder for more than a decade. But how could any of this happen?
When police officers knocked on the door of apartment 213 at the Oxford Apartments on July 22, 1991, they expected a routine check. What they found instead would become one of the most horrifying crime scenes in American history. A Polaroid photograph, then another, and another. 54 in total, each one documenting stages of dismemberment. But the photographs were just the beginning. Inside the refrigerator, next to a box of baking soda, sat a freshly severed human head. How did a quiet, polite man fool an entire city for over a decade? And how many times could he have been stopped? This is the story of Jeffrey Dahmer. Welcome to the Vault Files, where we unlock the darkest chapters of true crime history. Chapter 1: The Boy Who Collected Bones. To understand the monster, we have to go back to the beginning, back to Bath, Ohio, in the 1960s. Jeffrey Dahmer seemed like a normal kid. His father, Lionel, was a chemist. His mother, Joyce, worked as a teletype instructor. Middle-class family, nice neighborhood, the American dream. But beneath the surface, something was already wrong. By age 10, Jeffrey had developed a disturbing fascination. He would search the roadside for dead animals, bring them home and dissect them in the woods behind his house. He'd use chemicals stolen from his father's lab to dissolve the flesh, keeping the bones in jars like trophies. When neighbors asked questions, Lionel thought it was scientific curiosity, a budding biologist. He even showed Jeffrey how to properly bleach and preserve bones. What his father didn't know was that Jeffrey had already begun having fantasies. Dark fantasies about control and possession, about keeping things that could never leave him. His parents' marriage was falling apart. Bitter screaming matches echoed through the house. His mother suffered from depression and was heavily medicated. Jeffrey, caught in the middle, learned to disappear, to become invisible. By high school, he was drinking heavily, bringing vodka to school in a styrofoam cup. His classmates thought it was funny, calling him a class clown. They didn't see the isolation, the struggle with his sexuality in conservative 1970s Ohio, the fantasies growing darker in his mind. In June 1978, Jeffrey graduated high school. His parents were in the middle of a divorce. His mother took his younger brother and left. His father had moved out weeks earlier. Jeffrey was completely alone in that house. 3 weeks later, he picked up a hitchhiker named Stephen Hicks. Chapter 2: 13 Years of Deception. Stephen Hicks was 19 years old, just like Jeffrey. He was hitchhiking to a rock concert when Jeffrey offered him a ride. Instead, Jeffrey convinced him to come back to the house for beer and music. They hung out for hours, but when Stephen tried to leave, something in Jeffrey snapped. He couldn't let him go. He couldn't be alone again. Jeffrey grabbed a barbell and struck Stephen across the head. Then he strangled him. He was 18 years old, and he'd just committed his first murder. Jeffrey dismembered the body in the crawl space, packed the remains in garbage bags, and buried them in the woods. Later, paranoid about discovery, he dug them up, crushed the bones with a sledgehammer, and scattered them. Then something strange happened. Jeffrey didn't kill again. Not for 9 years. He joined the army, served as a medic in Germany, got discharged for alcoholism. He bounced between Ohio and Wisconsin, eventually moving in with his grandmother, Catherine, in West Allis, a Milwaukee suburb. To his grandmother, Jeffrey was a good boy trying to get his life together. He attended church with her, helped around the house, found work at the Ambrosia chocolate factory. But Jeffrey was leading a double life. At night, he'd visit Milwaukee's gay bars and bathhouses. He drugged men's drinks not to assault them, but to watch them sleep, to lie next to them while they were unconscious, to pretend for a few hours that they belonged to him. In September 1987, the killing resumed. Stephen Toomey, James Dockstader, only 14, Richard Guerrero, Anthony Sears. The intervals between murders shortened. Weeks became days. Jeffrey was refining his technique, perfecting his method, and he was doing it all in his grandmother's basement while she slept upstairs. The smell became unbearable. Catherine asked Jeffrey to leave, not knowing she was likely saving her own life. In May 1990, Jeffrey moved into apartment 213 at the Oxford Apartments. A one-bedroom unit, privacy, no more worried grandmother. What had been a sporadic killing spree became an assembly line of death. Chapter 3: The Boy Who Escaped. The night of May 27, 1991 should have ended everything. Two young women, Nicole Childress and Sandra Smith, are walking home when they see a naked teenage boy stumbling down the street. He's bleeding, disoriented, speaking in broken English mixed with Lao. His name is Konarek Sinthasamphone. He's 14 years old. The women call 911 and try to comfort him. Then, Jeffrey Dahmer appears, calm and smiling, trying to coax the boy back. "He's my boyfriend," Jeffrey tells the arriving police officers. "We had a little argument, too much to drink." The women protest loudly. "That's a child, something's wrong with him." But Jeffrey is so convincing, so polite, so normal seeming. He shows identification, though it's unclear if officers verify the age. He invites them up to his apartment to prove everything is fine. Officers John Balserzak, Joseph Gabrish, and Richard Poribcan go inside apartment 213. They smell something terrible, but accept Jeffrey's explanation about spoiled meat. They don't open the bedroom door, where the corpse of Tony Hughes has been decomposing for 3 days. They don't look in the refrigerator. They don't check the closet containing a full human skeleton. They return Konarek to Jeffrey's apartment and leave. Within an hour, Jeffrey murders him. But here's the tragedy within the tragedy. 3 years earlier, Jeffrey had been convicted of sexually assaulting Konarek's older brother, Kisan. He'd served only 10 months and was still on probation when he encountered Konarek. The system had failed this family twice. By July 1991, Jeffrey has killed 17 people. His apartment is running out of space. Body parts are stored everywhere. He's keeping skulls as trophies, painting some of them gray to look like plastic models. On July 22nd, Jeffrey approaches another young man outside a shopping mall. His name is Tracy Edwards, 32 years old. He offers him money for drinks and photos. Tracy agrees and walks into apartment 213. Almost immediately, something feels wrong. The smell. The way Jeffrey is looking at him. When Jeffrey tries to handcuff him, Tracy realizes he's fighting for his life. They struggle. Jeffrey threatens him with a knife, tries to drag him into the bedroom, but Tracy keeps talking, keeping Jeffrey distracted, waiting for his moment. When Jeffrey's attention lapses for just a second, Tracy runs. One handcuff still dangling from his wrist, he bolts out the door and into the street. He flags down a police car and points back at the Oxford Apartments. "There's a freak up there who tried to kill me." This time, the police would not leave without looking closer. Chapter 4: Apartment 213. Officer Robert Routh and Rolf Mueller escort Tracy Edwards back to apartment 213. Jeffrey answers the door, trying to explain. A misunderstanding. They'd been drinking. Officer Mueller walks toward the bedroom. Jeffrey tries to stop him, but Officer Routh holds him back. Mueller opens a drawer. Polaroids. Dozens of them. Bodies in various stages of dismemberment. Severed heads, hands arranged in prayer position, all taken in this apartment. "Cuff him," Mueller shouts. As they restrain him, Jeffrey doesn't resist. He just keeps repeating, "For what I did, I should be dead." What they discovered next defied comprehension. The refrigerator contained a human head on the bottom shelf, bags of internal organs, meat that wasn't from any animal. The freezer held 3 more heads, wrapped and labeled. A torso. In the bedroom closet, a complete human skeleton, fully articulated. A filing cabinet with 3 skulls, carefully cleaned and preserved. A 57-gallon drum filled with acid, and 3 decomposing bodies. The Polaroids documented everything. Jeffrey's entire process, from beginning to end. Some showed victims alive, then drugged, then dead, then dismembered, then arranged. Detective Patrick Kennedy, one of the first on scene, would later say it was like entering a different dimension, a place that shouldn't exist in reality. The county medical examiner had the grim task of identifying the remains. In apartment 213 alone, they found parts of 11 different men. But Jeffrey's confession would reveal the true scope of the horror. 17 victims over 13 years. Some killed in his grandmother's basement, some in this apartment, some dissolved completely in acid, some consumed. The families of the missing finally had answers, but the answers were far worse than anything they could have imagined. Chapter 5: The Trial and the Reckoning. In the interview room, Jeffrey Dahmer confessed to everything. Not reluctantly, not piece by piece. He provided names, dates, locations. He told investigators where to find Stephen Hicks's remains back in Ohio. He explained his methods, his rituals, his motivations with disturbing calm. He wanted to create companions who would never leave. When that proved impossible with living victims, he tried drilling holes in their skulls, pouring acid or boiling water into their brains while they were still alive, attempting to create compliant zombies. When they died anyway, he kept parts of them, photographed them, sometimes ate them, believing that they would become part of him forever. The case exposed catastrophic failures at every level. Multiple complaints to police about smells from apartment 213, all dismissed. The 3 officers who returned Conorak Synthesonfen to Jeffrey Dahmer were fired, though 2 were later reinstated. The probation system that failed to properly monitor a convicted sex offender. At trial in January 1992, Jeffrey's defense argued insanity. His attorney asked the jury, how could a sane person do what Jeffrey did? But the prosecution countered that Jeffrey's careful planning, his ability to hold down a job, his success at evading detection for 13 years, all proved he knew right from wrong. He simply chose wrong, over and over. The jury deliberated for 5 hours. Guilty on all 15 counts of murder in Wisconsin, legally sane. Judge Lawrence Graham sentenced him to 15 consecutive life terms, 957 years. Because Wisconsin had abolished the death penalty, Jeffrey would die in prison. At Columbia Correctional Institution, Jeffrey became a born-again Christian. He gave interviews to Stone Phillips, to investigators, to FBI profilers. He claimed remorse, though whether it was genuine or performance remained unclear. On November 28, 1994, while cleaning a prison bathroom, Jeffrey was beaten to death with a metal bar by fellow inmate Christopher Scarver. He was 34 years old. He'd served less than 3 years of his 1,000-year sentence. Jeffrey Dahmer murdered 17 young men, mostly men of color, mostly from marginalized communities.
Men whose disappearances weren't prioritized. Men whose families screamed for help but weren't heard until it was too late. The case exposed how differently missing persons from certain communities are treated, How many warning signs were ignored? How many chances existed to stop him? Konarak's synthesophone should have been saved that night in May 1991. So should Stephen Tuomi, Anthony Hughes, and 14 others. The question that haunts Milwaukee to this day: how many lives could have been saved if someone had just looked a little closer? If you want to explore more cases from the darkest corners of true crime, subscribe to the Vault Files and turn on notifications. These stories need to be told. These victims need to be remembered. I'm your host, and this has been the Vault Files. Sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones who seem the most normal. The vault is now closed.